Hello, Nicholas. How are you?
I am good. I'm good, and I'm so excited to be here just to talk about this amazing case study that we announced last week, actually.
Yeah.
A platinum certification for Hammer Brooklyn in Germany. Amazing, amazing building. And we're going to hear from Felix today about everything they did within it, and we're going to talk about kind of how certification can help and how certification adds value to the process, but also what you can learn from the certification as well. Yeah, I mean, we heard from Elizabeth a little bit earlier about kind of a process that you can think about for steps to do some experimentation, start small, build on it, and now we're actually going to a building that is pretty much, you know, cream of the crop, smart building. They're doing some phenomenal stuff. It's all there.
So, it's all there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I'm really looking forward to this half an hour that you have together with Felix Brinkmann. Shall we put him on stage?
Absolutely.
Let's see if Felix is here.
Hello, hello.
Hi, Nicholas.
How are you?
Yeah, good, thanks. How are you?
Good, good. Nice to see you.
Where are you from right now?
From a home office, actually.
Nice.
And that is in?
That's in Düsseldorf, in Germany.
Düsseldorf, Germany. Cool.
Yeah, right. And where are you guys?
Amsterdam.
Right outside Amsterdam. Well, Amsterdam, actually.
Yeah.
We had Amsterdam. Yeah.
Yeah, very nice. I'm very glad that, I mean, thanks for having us as Art Invest. So I'm really glad we can share some great insights of our first really smart building, Hammer Brooklyn. And yeah, and really looking forward to get to show it to you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
cool. That was the first one, but many more will follow, I hope.
Yeah.
I think from what I can see from Art Invest, many will follow, and I think you're completely on the right track in their strategy of how they're approaching it. It was interesting when Art Invest came in touch with Smart Building Certification. It was with that, we have built a smart building. Let's check it against the benchmark. Let's check it against other buildings. Let's see how we did. And you know, we see it now, and you all are going to see it in a moment. They've done an amazing job. So cool. I'm really excited to be talking about this.
I will let you guys dive into it. Felix, do you have some slides that you want to share?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so the format that we were thinking, and you know, as you leave the stage, feel free to jump back in whenever you want. But the format that we decided to go with today is to share some slides, some things that Art Invest did with the Hammer Brooklyn building. But we wanted to keep it kind of informal and open and have some discussion. So we encourage the audience at any point, add some questions to the chat field. We'd love to field those and support your all's understanding of this stuff as well. I think we saw so many amazing presentations today about all kinds of different aspects of smart building. And it's in the integration, it's when it comes together that it you know, it either is challenging, but it also gives you the biggest value. So Felix, I'm going to let you start and introduce yourself again, and let's get into it.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Nicholas. So maybe a short introduction about myself. My name is Felix Brinkmann. I'm part of Art Invest Real Estate. Art Invest Real Estate is one of the largest commercial real estate developers in Germany, and yeah, we've came a long way towards our smart building strategy. So it has been developed over the last couple of years, and I'm part of this journey since 2.5 years now. And yeah, it really, we put much effort in it until like developing the strategy was a long time. Developing the strategy was our main job, but now it's actually came when finishing the strategy. It now comes up to putting this strategy into our buildings, and the Hammer Brooklyn Digital Pavilion is our first project where this is actually yeah, where this strategy is all set up and can be seen in Core and Shell.
And that's kind of one of the first myths. Let's just break the first myth. You know, a lot of people think that once I have a smart building, you know, it'll take care of itself, it'll manage itself, it will, you know, fix itself in a way.
Yeah, I mean, it would be a dream, but we see that us as a real estate developer. I mean, maybe I can jump to the slide where this is really explained, because as a real estate developer, we see ourselves as the ones who actually build the basis for a perfect smart building. So, and in comparison to a traditional smart building, we make sure that all, I mean, building systems, actuators, sensors in a building are able to communicate. For example, in a traditional building, you have many different, I mean, we call it islands. So, for example, the elevator has information about where the elevator stands, in which area it is, and doesn't share the information with any other systems. And same for the maybe presence detectors for the light. Only yeah, adjusts the light when it sees present, but doesn't share this information. And we see it as our task to make sure that all this information is shared and comes together in a common IoT platform. And once this building is set up, the technology stack is right, I think this is where the most important work needs to be done. And afterwards, I mean, as you said, then actually more work starts, because behind every smart building there should be a long-term strategy, and a long-term strategy especially regarding the user which is in the building, because we always want our buildings to be perfectly suited to our stakeholders which are involved in the building, and this is actually where work starts.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd love to talk more about that change management aspect later on in our presentation, where when you hand over a building, how does a company take it on? How do they learn from the technology? How do they structure themselves? But we can talk about that a little bit more when we talk about the certification.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this is the one aspect that is really interesting about the certification process, that we learn, okay, what's beyond, I mean, building the building, and I mean, you really assess what the real estate companies do in order to make the most of the smart building once it is built. And maybe coming back to our main motivation why we are building smart buildings and putting so much effort and invested heavily in our smart building strategy, is because we see technology in buildings clearly as an enabler. So technology is not an end in itself; it should always serve a purpose, and this purpose can vary. But for us, it's those 7 points that really sum it up: what smart buildings should do, and yeah, for example, the topic of sustainability. I mean, in politics, in community and society, sustainability becomes increasingly important, and smart buildings can actually make a really big impact regarding the sustainability of the real estate industry, and especially in office buildings. And yeah, and another topic, well-being, also became really important in terms of COVID, where yeah, I mean, tenants were really interested in getting their people back to the office, and people want to go back to the office if it's if it's healthy, if it support their well-being, and also they're not afraid to go back to the office because of any infection risk or something. And yeah, another topic is the topic of new work, where people expect, or tenants have problems getting their workforce back to the office because the office is not flexible enough, or it is not like fulfilling their needs to be as productive as possible, because offices are more and more fighting against home office and third places where people can work. So smart buildings can really have an impact here as well. And next, about transparency. So all the data generated in the building can actually be used either for the user to keep him informed, for the tenant to keep him informed about how his office space is used, and on the other side for the operator, who can really keep track of the, for example, energy consumption in the building. And so those 4 aspects are more or less more user and operator or tenant specific. But I mean, as a real estate industry, we are also very interested in how it can really impact the rentability of a building. So it should be perfectly suitable for a user, which is why tenants are really interested in coming into our smart buildings. And then we've got the topic of asset value, of course, because from our point of view, a very future-proof building, which has the best technology to fulfill the stakeholders' needs, is worth more than a traditional building. And yeah, to show you how this can look like, I brought you a nice picture from our digital pavilion, which has a very, very unique history as well. So we brought, I mean, for the project itself, the city of Hamburg were looking for, or were trying to establish a place for community and innovation in Hamburg, in the part of the city in Hamburg called Hammerbrook. And we stepped in as a real estate developer because we said with our smart building strategy, our smart buildings, we can actually perfectly fit those plans. And so we got an old expo pavilion from the United States, from Milano. We got it from Milano to Hamburg and made it actually one of the smartest office buildings in the world. And as you can see in how the building is set up, there's lots of open space areas for exchange. It has some also meeting rooms, collaboration rooms, studios, and maybe shortly about the tenant as well as the factory Berlin, which is the place for co-working and getting members together to innovate and to work together on innovative projects. And yeah, in combination, that's the perfect combination of where the building fulfills the needs of the city to yeah, positively impact the community. And on the other hand side, the building is also perfectly suitable for the tenant because they want to yeah, produce innovation, produce innovative ideas. And yeah, the building infrastructure is actually supporting exactly this idea.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, at the beginning of our certification process, where we were just collecting data, and we saw everything that was going on in your building. You all won the Catalyst Award, actually, for that contribution to society, which is just so cool to share.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, it was very, very good for us to see that. Yeah, I mean, smart buildings should not only, I mean, of course, should be judged based on the technology involved, but also on the impact it has on not only the tenant, but also on the surroundings. And it was very, very cool to see that the Catalyst Award exactly rewarded that. And because we made lots of thoughts next to classic, okay, what technology do we put in the building? But it should always have an impact. And this impact was actually yeah, rewarded by the Catalyst Award, and we were very glad to be part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and I like what you're saying about, you know, the different stakeholder perspectives, right? Where you're looking at it from every angle, from the owner, from the property manager, from the tenant, from the user, from society as a whole. And that's why you all scored so well, I believe, is that you are giving functionality to each of those stakeholders. So often when organizations talk about smart, they talk about it being kind of a gimmick for engagement or for getting user to enjoy the experience more. Can you say a little bit more about that stakeholder approach? Like, why is that so important in smart?
Yeah, I mean, we've got many stakeholders involved, and we want that every stakeholder really understands the value of a building. And maybe I can show you some KPIs how we measure the impact of smart buildings, but also the KPIs we can use for each stakeholder, so he can make the most of the smartness in the building. So maybe here about the topics of sustainability, occupancy, and health and well-being, because those are very topics measurable quite easily. And for example, in terms of sustainability, at the top range, you see that we have live data regarding the energy consumption, and we really try to give this data to the office user. We actually can see how much energy does the building consume, and also not just putting it into watts, but then putting it in a more like yeah, transparent way, so that the user just knows that he's in a sustainable building, and that his behavior has an impact on the sustainability of the building. And this is also a way how we try to use the data the raw data from the building, make it to visualize it to the user, and actually showing him that the building is sustainable. On the other hand side, showing him that he can have an impact.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important piece that you all have done, and I think the audience should take note of that. You know, it's one thing to put the energy consumption up on a dashboard for people to understand what that is, but the context isn't necessarily there. So an average user of a building is going to look at that energy and be like, okay, that's an interesting number, but I actually don't know what it means. So to color code it, or to give it a relational effect like you all have done here, where you show that this is how many, you know, this is how much we're saving from other measures. I think that is really important. So always give it context and always connect it to the end user. You guys have done that brilliantly.
And what you also see here is the aspect you mentioned about strategy. Is because we are running because once the building started operation in May, we started to work with the user and all the stakeholders, like the operator as well, to further develop how can we display this data, or what would be the most valuable way of displaying this data, because users demand very different things, and maybe the factory in Hamburg, in the Hamburg Brooklyn building, wants to have different data or visualizations than other tenants in other smart buildings. And of course, we have a common ground, but from that point, we can actually further develop it and make it that the user or the tenant can have the maximum impact.
Yeah.
And that's really crucial.
And that's one of the things that we see with smart buildings that is so amazing, actually, is that there's endless possibilities of what you can do with this data and with the different connections of these technologies.
Yeah.
It's really important to come up with a plan with your team to understand how are you going to use it and how are you going to drive the biggest impact for the business.
Yeah, and the most important thing is, from real estate developers' perspective, is at first the technology stack, but because it's so important that we have the data. Mm-hmm. After having the data, we can, the possibilities are really, unlimited.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and maybe coming from sustainability data to occupancy data, you got the same thing of, on the one hand side, you got the stakeholder of the actual building user who's, for example, interested in live occupancy and in the building, wants to know, okay, where's free office space for me? Can I book my meeting room? And on the other hand side, we can also use this data to analyze how is the building actually used and how is it over time. For example, here you can also see since starting operation in May, how does the building develop, and also taking into consideration the COVID and how's the building reacting to it. Are people coming to the office? When they come to the office, what do they do? Are they more at their desk? Are they more in the open space area, in the kitchen or wherever? And so you can really see what people are doing in your building and adjust accordingly. So because it has been, a long time ago, it has not, people were not, or tenants were not that interested in their spaces used most effectively. But now we are in times where spaces are valuable, and then just need to be used effectively.
And what's amazing about Hamburg Brooklyn, where you guys have gone even a little bit further, is for all of our, this is a global audience who we're speaking to right now. So in Europe, we have GDPR, which is very strict privacy laws, where all of this data needs to be on general level, where you can't see any detail of who's what and where. But actually, on a user basis, you guys actually do have that, right? So you went to the degree of getting that permission from all those users to opt in or opt out.
Yeah, and this really depends. We are very, very careful about what data we actually use. For example, for this type of analytics, we are really focusing on the data that we actually need to add value.
Yeah.
And most of this data is not really, you cannot bring down this data to one person. Of course, for example, when you want to be located in an office building and the user says, okay, I want to be found by my colleagues, then you need to give your active submission that others are able to see your position.
Yeah.
But we are not at any point using this position for any analysis or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, you don't need to, right? I mean, you don't need to know that Joe sat behind his desk for 6 hours. I mean,
Exactly.
But it does add value to the user experience when you're trying to find your colleague, as an example. So you guys did a really good job that from each of the stakeholder perspectives, you actually cut out what needed to be displayed as useful and needed. Very
good. Yeah, and I think it's really interesting and exciting to see how a building like Hammer Brooklyn develops over time, and we are really curious how it will be in the long term. And I think it will be our task, together with the tenant and the users, to optimize it continuously and to learn from the data we collect over time.
And I think it's another interesting point for the audience to hear. You guys created a role, right, for somebody who is actively managing smart building in the space.
Yeah, definitely. So what's interesting about smart buildings is, of course, I mean, there are a lot of new competencies you need to build it, but you also need a lot of new competencies to be able to manage it. And so we have actually a person who actually manages the smartness of the buildings, always in clear connection to the user and the tenant. So and who's also very close to us as a real estate developer and owner. So really, on a weekly basis, we come together and see how we can improve the building.
Yeah.
And, this is also a thing, which makes it unique and a pioneer project.
Yeah, it's incredible, right? Because that role in the past would be doing a lot of that information gathering manually, and then be putting it into written reports, and now all of that is just speeding up. You know, that rate of improvement and that rate of optimization is almost in real time, which I just think is so exciting when we see buildings like this.
Yeah, it definitely is. Maybe about the last topic of health and well-being as well. So we are able to manage or to analyze the impact of the building on health of the users, and we can also make it transparent to the user that they are working in a healthy environment. And I mean, especially in current times, people are very interested in that, and the building can simply provide this data. And of course, this data is also used in order to control the building systems to really optimize the health or the air quality in the building. So on the one hand side, we can really use this data for better building operations, but on the other hand side, we can really add value to the user again. And
again,
the combination we need, right?
Again, looking at it from multiple angles is just fantastic. And then, you know, in the future, you guys have a very good tenant in there now. If you need a tenant or you need a new buyer or whatever, you have the data to really promote what this building actually does, and others don't really have that. So I think it really helps in that valuation piece that you were talking about as well. So multiple aspects of how you use the different technology. It's phenomenal.
Yeah, and this really led us to the question of how do we recognize real smart buildings? So, I mean, we've been working on it for a couple of years now, but for us, it's really getting defining what you want to achieve with a building. And in Hamburg, it was pretty clear what we wanted to achieve. And then setting up that the technology is able to really perform based on those values. And of course, the technology stack has a common ground, but we really need to develop this or define the right technology in order to fulfill those needs. And we really came up with a great pair or a combination of technologies that are not really, I mean, I think there might be buildings where there is a lot of technology installed and nobody really knows what the technology does, but for us it's really clear what each technology does and what's the value it adds to the stakeholders.
Absolutely. And I would like to spend a little bit of time talking about their certification. So, so smart building certification, you all heard about it earlier today from Elizabeth, but it's just that, right? We're looking to build a standard for people to connect to be able to siphon through the noise of smart. Smart is there's so much going on. There's so many technologies, so many solutions. How can you actually break through all of that and look at this in a holistic way? So you can take a screenshot of this later and you can read it, but what it is this is our model, right? So we really look at smart buildings from a number of different perspectives, which fully align with exactly what Felix was just talking about. We look at it from a building usage perspective. How well do they have a handle on how this building is being used? We look at it from a building performance perspective. So how sustainable is it? How do they have control over their energy consumption? Do they have control over their water consumption? Do they have the control over the different aspects that inform sustainability? We have a module on building environment. How healthy is this building? Does it have good air quality? Does it have good light? Does it have good sound? Does it have good aspects that are making it a healthy and productive environment for the people in it? User behavior and collaboration is, can people find each other? Can they interact with the building? Can they change the lights? Can they change the different aspects? So how are they interacting with each other and how are they interacting with the building? And finally, how are we doing with safety and security? You know, we live in a very complex environment now, more technology than ever, and all of that data is very sensitive and very important to keep safe. So how well does the building look at their safety and security protocols, their frameworks that they use, the technologies that they choose, these types of things. And all of that is brought together with connectivity and integrative design. The way that Hammer Brooklyn has taken a slim layer of technology and maximized its impact for all of its stakeholders is phenomenal. They have such a lean technical structure for such a huge maximum impact that we were blown away. When we compare it to other buildings, we were really surprised. In our press release, we called it a perfect example of German engineering, which we coined, and I think it deserves that very much. And a lot of this stuff we quantify. So we look at the infrastructure, and that provides a quantity score for the building. But we also we have a peer review model of assessors that look at the things that are not as black and white. You know, it's with the quantified aspects of the certification, you know, it's either there or it's not there. But there's also a lot of stuff that's going on in this building that we need to look at from a qualitative perspective that is still up for opinion and up for discussion. And in that, we look at governance, we look at integrative design, and we look at kind of the outcomes. Are they meeting health, sustainability, human performance, and building maintenance and management objectives? But two things I really want to just mention with this building, and then I'll open it up for any questions people might have, is governance. You know, they know and they have gone from the beginning to think about this building for the long term. How are we going to manage it? How are we going to optimize it? How are we going to make it better in the future? So they have very regular meetings, they have regular KPIs that they're discussing, and they have regular reports that they're sharing with all those different stakeholders. So it's just amazing how they've got everybody connected to the mission. And then integrative design, this one is really interesting for us because we know if you listen to all of the different solutions over this entire day, there's so many different ways of building a smart building right now that we don't necessarily dock points right now based on integrative design, because what we're really interested in is that the buildings are doing all of these things. That's a good place to start. But the way Hammer Brooklyn has done integrative design is beyond us. We are so just overwhelmingly blown away by how they've done it. And for that, and I know we're running out of time, I hope we can take a question or two. We're planning an event on the 22nd of September with their slim infrastructure, the different suppliers that are part of it. We're going to dive deeper into this. We're going to talk about their integrative design, the trials, the tribulations, the things that went well, the things that were challenging. And we definitely think that this is something for the market and the network to get clear understanding of what it takes to build a smart building. Can we see if there's any questions? Felix, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, maybe from an artist perspective, it was really great to run through the certification process, especially, I mean, for us to prove that our smart building strategy is just the right way to go. I mean, we knew it at some point, but
yeah, you knew it.
But it's always good to have like a third party, like to taking a look at it, and but it's also great that we know, okay, where we stand, but we also know where we can also improve, and to have a benchmark to other buildings. And I think this is the only way we can also, I mean, from a standpoint now, we're really excited about our next smart buildings and how we can improve further, even beyond Hammer Brooklyn. And yeah, the certification process really helped us with that, understanding yeah, what we can do and what we will be able to do in the future.
Yeah, and our certification is a benchmark system, right? So over time, the benchmark changes, and we look for the smartest buildings in the space to continue to push it and break it.
Yeah.
Paul is asking some questions. Paul member, what's the biggest lesson learned so far for you, Felix?
Let me quickly just.
Where are you seeing the biggest benefits, which you perhaps weren't expecting?
I mean, the biggest benefit from a biggest learning from my side is that that is really the most important thing. I mean, we just mentioned is that you really keep your stakeholders close together and to work in this. Because once the smart building is built, of course, all the data is here, but we really need to make use of this data in the long term as well. We don't want it just to be perfect at the point where the operation starts. We want it to be even better in the future. And this takes really a close teamwork and a strategy. And I think this is the most, the challenge many real estate companies developing smart buildings will also have. Because those stakeholders might not be as close as you need them to be. But for example, in Hammer Brooklyn, it's just a perfect match. And yeah, this might be a game changer as well.
I think it's one of the most underestimated aspects. You know, I think especially when a developer builds a smart building and then sells it and hands it over, you know, there's so much of that technology and usage that's lost in that transition. So that's another way that smart building certification can help, is use that to help transfer all this knowledge of what is smart to your next users and tenants, owners, whatever it's going to be. Because I think there's a huge risk there, actually.
Yeah, definitely.
Felix, this was awesome, and thank you so much for your time and sharing your wisdom with us.
Great. And I'm really happy to share more insights, and even in our next event where we can actually see where the technology partners just show what they added to the smart building, which is now ready in operation. So yeah, always happy to talk to you guys.
Absolutely.
Looking forward
have a nice rest of your day.
Yeah, you too. Thanks.
Have a good day. See you soon.